I swear it feels like every time I turn around lately, my Codex usage limits are completely exhausted, whether that's for the rolling 5-hour cycle or for the full week of usage. This last time it ran out 3 days before the reset, which is always extremely convenient, especially when you're right in the middle of building your latest destined to fail vibe coded app or running your 500th refactor of a code base you never understood in the first place and probably never will. Either way, in the past I would have switched to the extortionary rates of API billing or reached for Claude code, but ever since they neutered Claude, I've been looking for a more efficient means of blowing my next 10 trillion tokens on building my 15th second brain. So what do you do when you're all out of tokens and you still have 3 days left before your usage resets? You send all of your tokens and all of your private data to China like a good vibe coder. That's what we're going to explore in this video with the Pi agent harness and DeepSeek version 4. Before we get started, I follow a lot of real developers these days out of some kind of morbid technical curiosity, and I'll often hear, how is it even possible to burn through 1 or even 2 subscriptions with Codex for multiple Claude Code Max plans? Just to clear the air, this is how you do it. So surprisingly, in my experience, DeepSeek is actually a very powerful coding model. That is, if you're okay sending all of your data to China. Clearly I am. The main benefit actually is that it's extremely surprisingly cheap. I mean, you can have like a major all-day coding session and spend like $2, if not less. So it's at least worth checking out. Let's go ahead and set up Pi. We got our virtual machine here. I'm just going to walk through every step. First, what I would do is install Ghosty, which is just a terminal alternative. Easy enough. All right, we got Ghosty installed. Got to get NPM first. If anything weird comes up, just ask your coding agent. I had no idea what this meant, but I figured it out. Had to run a couple commands. Everything looks fine. So we'll close. All right, we'll go back to the npm command, copy, paste. I had to go back and forth with Codex a couple of times to get this working. I suck at this. All right, so I guess the first time it runs, it downloads a couple of extra things, but now we'll run it one more time. So it's telling us that we don't have any models active. So we'll go log in, use API key. It's really actually pretty sweet. You can search for anything. So we'll search for DeepSeek. Find your API key and enter it. All right, now that we have the API key set, one thing that's cool about Pi is that you don't really have to quit and get back into it like you do with Codex and Claude Code a lot of the time. So if I remember correctly, it should just work. Now that we added the API key, it shows right here that DeepSeek v4 Pro High is active actually already. So let's just see if it works. And if we want to switch to DeepSeek Flash, we can just do this. And another cool thing is you can switch models mid-session. Another model that I kind of like that's one of the Chinese models is KimiK 2.6. So we go log in again, use API key. Yeah, so it's one of these. Honestly, can't remember which one it is, but I know that I had it working at one point. The same process though, you just add your API key and you're off to the races, just like any other coding agent in the terminal. If you're familiar with using Claude Code or Codex, with this you just do Pi and that starts the session. The idea with Pi is that you can customize the harness to do whatever you want it to do with Codex and Claude Code. Both of those companies inject all of their instructions with every prompt, and the idea with Pi is that it's completely blank slate. You can do whatever you want, which is great, and also not great if you're a complete amateur like I am. There's a lot to learn, but the really great thing is that they have really good documentation for the agent itself. So I could say something like, before I send that, I'll just show you kind of what we did in the file system so that you can see it update when it does. So we go to, you have to do Command Shift Space to see the hidden folders. What we installed was this Pi agent. You'll see right now there's no AGENTS.md file. So when I send this message, it should build one of those. All right, so apparently it didn't put it in the right spot. Just to demonstrate, we'll switch the model to the Pro version. That was disappointing. Okay, so you could kind of see where it picked up on the right documentation, which was this part right here. I mean, embarrassing first try, but I'm actually glad that happened because it shows that, especially when you were first starting out with the Pi coding harness, you should be direct with the agent and help them as much as possible because they have zero context at all. So it had to like originally even find the right place to look for the Pi docs. But once it finds those, it's usually pretty freaking good at understanding how the harness works itself. So from there, it built this agents.md file, put it in the right place. Let's look through that real quick. I mean, it looks like a pretty good general purpose document. We'll just leave that for now. Apparently it has this tree feature. It says you can navigate to any previous point and continue from there, which is actually really cool. I didn't understand that before. All branches live in a single file. Okay, so we could do tree, and then I could go back to where I should have told the agent the right thing to begin with. Let's try that out. Sure, we'll go summarize. I'll just build on to the original prompt and see what happens. With Pi, you can toggle the model's thinking mode with Shift Tab. So DeepSeek V4 Pro has thinking off, high, extra high, and then Flash has off, high, extra high as well. Leaner overall went from 8 verbose sections with subheadings to 8 tight sections, removed example code blocks. All right, let's take one more look at it. One other thing I might want to include is making sure the agent is aware of its own environment. Amateur hour over here, but I don't know, maybe this is useful for somebody. One of the cool things that I've been messing around with is Pi actually has an SDK as well. So there are some people like the guy that created GSD, they get shit done GitHub project. The way that he packaged version 2, I think, of that is it's actually just a Pi coding agent using the SDK. So when you install GSD version 2, you're basically doing what we just did, but you're pulling down his Pi coding agent that he has customized and configured for his GSD situation. So the cool takeaway is that you could build your own Pi agent and allow other people to download it and use it. All right, so I actually asked it to build me an SDK agent to be able to demo the fact that it can do that. And it built a code review agent, and it also detects the Pi docs. I'm going to point it at the agents.md file that we just built just to see if it works. So we'll go code review since we're already in this folder. All right, so we have to refresh the ZSHRC config, and I had it build me an alias called ZR that does that rather than having to remember this command. All right, let's try again. So that was just a basic bare bones implementation of the agent SDK apparently, but I want it to be interactive. Actually change the thinking to extra high, see if that helps. It's kind of crazy with all this work that we've been doing for the last half hour, or whatever. It's only spent almost 6 cents. Compare that to Claude Code or Codex, we'd be in like $15 by now probably with all my amateur back and forth. Okay, cool. It looks like it added those changes. So we'll clear this out, refresh our config if necessary. I don't know. So this is pretty typical of me. I have 2 agents like analyzing the same document at the same time, which is not ideal. But this last report looks pretty thorough actually. I get impatient, and it's stupid of me to not start a brand new session after I make all of these changes. I think I'm still running the original agent that built the original agents.md file. It's funny, when you're using the Codex app, it almost feels like context doesn't even exist. Like it's not even a thing. But then if you use Codex in the CLI, you see like the context indicator, and it makes you remember that it is important to keep your context clear. I definitely should have done that with this agent. All right, so rather than having it fix anything right here, since this agent just made a whole bunch of updates and changes, made it all new and fancy and shiny and better than ever before, I'm sure. Just like always. Anyways, I'm going to refresh it, and we'll run it one more time just to see what it finds, see if it runs quicker. Looks like he added a reviewing indicator, which is great. The crazy thing with these agents is that, like any agent, I mean, I'm sure you're gonna have people that are convinced that their agent is perfect and whatever, but the fact is they spit out so much more information than any human can possibly digest and understand. And yes, of course, I could add a rule that says be concise, blah, blah, blah. But like, I don't know. I just I don't know how anybody like where to even begin. Yeah, looks awesome. Looks like you found a whole bunch of stuff. Let's try the fix command. I don't mean to sound like a downer, even though I am by nature, but it's like yes, I should probably put a command or a instruction somewhere that says be concise. Or with Pi, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of customizations you can do to improve on how verbose the output is, which is all great. And I'm sure somebody's got it figured out, but I don't yet. So especially with DeepSeek, it seems to be like a more verbose model by nature. All right, let's just see what this file looks like at this point. Even these even these simple files that are so pivotal and consequential, it's hard to keep up on them. Like the AGENTS.md is the general instruction file for the agent, and it's like, okay, how many times has this thing changed just in this little conversation? And like, how is it humanly possible to keep track of everything? It's not. Also understand I'm not a developer. I've worked in the marketing and technical industry, like technical support for marketing and the web development industry. Like I am comfortable with being around code and but I'm not a developer by any means. That's all to say that it's I don't know, just a lot of information to digest. And these agents are amazing and extremely powerful. And also, like, what the hell are they doing? I don't know, especially DeepSeek. Got some Chinese agent we're sending all of our information to. I don't know, it looks pretty good overall. One of my biggest hangups with all this stuff is that, I mean, I could spend the rest of the week attempting to fine tune this document, even though I know like very little about what actually would make the agent successful. So you kind of just have to build and use and try to tweak as you go, but it looks like a good starting point at least. So we'll just end that session. So just to summarize, what we did is we installed Pi, which is an agent harness. We set up DeepSeek with our API key. We've been using DeepSeek version 4 Pro, and we tested out DeepSeek Flash before. We had the agent build us an AGENTS.md file, which is just a high-level instruction file for the Pi agent going forward. So any agent session that we start with Pi will have this instruction file loaded into context for better or worse. You can see it right here, which is awesome. If we had any skills, it would also list them here. There's a lot that I like about the Pi agent harness. Just out of the box, it's really lightweight, and the fact that it's so self-aware is like really powerful, because I feel like I don't know, I feel like my results vary wildly with Claude and Codex as in terms of like how self-aware it is. I guess what I'm saying is I feel like the Pi harness has really good documentation for the agents themselves, whatever, so that they can understand the framework and the harness that they're working within, so that you can have them like build an SDK like we just had it build, or skills, or whatever else you want to customize in the Pi harness. The homepage is definitely worth looking through. It's like extremely practical and useful. And I mean, I should spend more time in it myself. It's like, oh, how do you do this one thing, rather than talking to an agent for 4 hours going back and forth? It's probably right on the homepage. My understanding is that it does not have an MCP integration like natively, so you have to add a plugin or something, or I think they're called extensions. And on that note, this little demonstration was on a virtual machine. Let's go back to my machine and let's ask the Pi agent what customizations I have, like what extensions and stuff. So if you look at my Pi agent harness and you want to copy some of it, hopefully the agent will tell us what you can copy. All right, this is what my terminal looks like on my actual machine. We'll open up a new window, move it over to the side. There we go. So this is the equivalent of what we were doing on the virtual machine. Mine just looks a little bit prettier. I put together a prompt to get it to tell us about the customizations that I've done. So we'll see what the results are of that. And actually, let's open up another window. I want to see how Codex interprets the same command. So this is Codex 5.5 extra high inside of the Pi folder. Same prompt. We'll see how they compare. Here is the Pi output. Yeah, so somewhere the themes got misaligned. There's some misalignment going on somewhere, but for the most part, both agents surface the same stuff. So that was DeepSeek in the Pi agent harness, a pretty powerful coding agent. DeepSeek kind of reminds me of Claude code in the early days. The reality is that Codex and Claude code are still better for most things, but if you get desperate and you actually need to throw a bunch of tokens at something for cheap, it's at least worth testing out for like a fun, cheap side project, if nothing else, just to learn how to use the Pi agent harness and figure out how to use DeepSeek. I do feel like it would be irresponsible of me not to kind of warn you away from testing this stuff if you don't know what you're doing, especially with a model like DeepSeek. With Codex, I would say, yeah, go sign up, test it out, give it a run, download the actual Codex app. But for the Pi agent harness and using something like DeepSeek and all of these other crazy edge LLM tools, I would discourage against it unless you're an adventurous tinkering technical disaster like I am, just always trying to break things and figure out fun, cool ways to do things. And the Pi agent harness does encourage sandboxing from the very beginning, which I was experimenting with, but then you're kind of stuck babysitting, and it feels like the old days of Claude code where you have to click approve every 5 seconds or copy paste from the sandbox into the actual native environment, which I hate. So I'm kind of a cowboy as far as this stuff is concerned. Naive, happy to test fate with all this technical stuff. I do have a pretty solid time machine backup process, taking snapshots of my system like every hour. So that definitely has come in handy a couple of times with all of these agentic experiments. Just be cautious, be smart, beware. Assume that every single word you type into one of these boxes is going to be leaked someday. That's probably the safest way to think about it.